something to fight for. Nothing to fight for. Disregarding your name, your smell is
Good evening, race fans. It's the GT Endurance Championships 2024. We're here for qualifying. I'm going to see if I can get Brohawk in. Brohawk, can you hear me, buddy? Hello? It should be me and Brohawk. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Brohawk? Clearly not. How you doing, guys? Let me try and sort out why we can't hear Brohawk. But yes, we're here for qualifying. It should be working. There's no reason why it should be. Hello? Hang on. No, I can't hear you. Yes, so we're here for qualifying for round two of the GTEC or Gran Turismo Endurance Championship. We're here from Daytona. I am still trying to find out why I can't hear a Brohawk. Everything here says I should hear him. Let me have a look here if there's anything missing. Now, Brohawk, are you there, buddy?
Hello.
There we go, we've got him. We can hear him.
Nah. Yeah.
I pressed every button but the one I was supposed to push. How are you?
Doing well, my friend. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. We've had a bit of a bug in the house. We've had a chest infection ravaged through the house
Oof.
like COVID through a care home. It's been it's been insane. But yeah, everyone's on the mend now. So
Cool.
if I do lose my voice and stop talking, at least you're here to save me.
Yeah, there we go.
Looking forward to it. It's gonna be quick tonight, isn't it?
Yeah. The lobby is full, so I will be relying on your stream to see what's going on, but we'll make it work.
Yeah, no, it's looking good. I mean, we've got some really quick drivers doing qualifying tonight as well. Looking forward
Yep.
to seeing what they're going to chuck out. Are we going to get 2 from 2? That's the big question. Is James going to put AHR on pole? I know he's pretty darn quick. We know that Nick's pretty quick. We know that Mazda can put in a time or two for Sector 7. I think
Yep.
it's going to be close. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple of tenths in it.
Absolutely. So, we had a big car shuffle last week when they nerfed the GTR and a little bit of a nerf to the BMW, and so there was kind of a scramble to change cars. So we'll see if the car changes make a difference. I know James certainly has it in him to put down a fast time, but lots of fast guys in here, so be cool to see.
I mean, I haven't been about for just over a week, obviously, with what's going on in the house. But from
Mhm.
what I've heard, the last update has balanced the GR3s out much better. Also, I've heard. I could be wrong.
So I don't know how balanced it is now. I know at least in this league, the AMG and the McLaren were kind of a step above everything else in terms of how they're on tire wear, how they are on fuel and things for the endurance stuff. I think the dailies and stuff have seen a lot better variety in terms of the cars, but we'll see how the changes affect this, because I know that the Corvette was very highly sought after, as was the Lexus. A lot of people talked about using the Lexus as well.
Well, I think here it's it's going to be difficult to judge. I think because this track is one that favours high speed, so it favours
Yes.
the top end. So you might not be so quick in first and second gear, but if you can get more out of that fifth and sixth gear, this is where it's really going to pay dividends. So yeah, that'll be interesting. They're not allowed to slipstream, are they, in qualifying? I'm correct in that, aren't I?
They went over this. I want to say that they can. There's just no bump drafting.
Okay.
I might be wrong on that one.
Because it's very difficult to do qualifying around here with 14 cars and not not get
Right. Yeah. So
So I brought
we'll
up
see.
the current team standings, as you can see. So Sector 7
Mhm.
currently P1, with Overboost sitting in P2, and Esports Race Asylum down in P3. Now, I would have expected after round 1 to see the kind of Medway team, the Esports Race Asylum team in sort of P1, P2, that kind of area. But it just goes to show how close this field is, that there are new teams too, just like Sector 7, that have come in and immediately set their mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing too, Catalunya is not an easy track to figure out. So the fact that we have these teams that are new to a lot of us, right, that brought in some drivers that maybe we hadn't heard about, or had team changes and whatnot. The fact that they came in and are already at the top is very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a soft spot for Sector 7, mostly because one of our black flag drivers, Monkey Man, because we missed out on qualifying, would you believe it, by a tenth. A
Oh,
tenth for this. So yeah, it balls my piss a little bit. But they, big, and the irony is the guy that was going to do our qualifying, Monkey Man, couldn't do the qualifying that day because he had to work. So we've loaned him to Sector 7 for this race. But we are about to start qualifying. So we'll have a look and see now who is really going to set the early times. I think that's it. I think the key here is to set a nice early time and kind of put pressure on everybody else, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think using if they are allowed to use the slipstream to try and use that to your advantage, if you can find someone that's maybe a little bit faster than you normally, you can kind of latch on behind them and use the tri-oval to maybe get a better time than them. Set your team up well for the race.
Absolutely. Now, I'm hoping, after the last update, briefly the keyboard controls will stop working, but I think they are now. We'll find out what it's
Rule is you are not allowed to slow down to grab slip off another car in quali. Interesting.
Right.
Okay, that's great from...
That makes sense. I suppose if you've got it, you've got it.
Right.
Of course, if you've got... The key is as well, is if you do pick up some slip and the car in front of you is significantly slower, it's actually going to hamper your lap, so you're better off just trying to set that lap without worrying too much about this. Right, let's find out who's the car. That's Jay Batty there. Oh no, he's not. Who's any of them? It's Nick. They're in that Corvette. I'm expecting the Corvette to do good things here.
Oh yeah, we in practice we put down some pretty good times in the Corvette. It's a pretty strong car here. I don't know about the rest of the tracks. I think it'll be good at Le Mans, but here especially it's going to be pretty solid.
In a straight line, it's that kind of American car thing, isn't it? The wide track, straight line, they're awesome. It's when it gets twisted a little bit narrow that the American cars tend to suffer to the European options.
Yep, absolutely. Good old American muscle, good in a straight line, and everywhere else is you're either going to get killed by it or it's questionable because it won't turn.
How you doing, Kings? Tell me if the mic's got better. I have a little fiddle with it. History of reviews. If it ever goes to Google, I will get nothing, maybe. So thanks for that, Paul. Kings, hello, and hello to everyone else that's out there. Someone's knocking on my door. Sorry, bear with me. you carry on talking, mate.
Yep, I got you. Yeah, so as per usual, Nick, the first one out, and Nick is a fantastic driver himself, and naturally when they switched over from, I think they were in the GTR to the Corvette, we felt like at AHR the Corvette was a really strong choice, and to see Nick's team do it as well, felt pretty good about it. But here we go, the first hot lap is going to be Nick, if I can get my computer to cooperate. There we go.
With my mic, because my mic up a little bit. There we go, I think I've got it, there we go. Yeah, sorry, that was my son knocking on the door earlier. Despite the fact we've got a key in a box outside the door, he's a freaking idiot. There we go. Right, so Nick has got the first lap. Let's go on board and have a little look at this lap. So once you've got through that infield section, this is where you can really start to find your pace. And you come down to this sort of bus stop chicane, which is coming up now, and your braking point here is absolute paramount, isn't it?
Yep, it really is, and getting the brake pressure right is important as well, because you have to bleed off enough speed to get around the bus stop, but you don't want to bleed off too much because then you just lose so much time getting on the power lane.
That's, I mean, one thing I found is that sometimes you're better off scrubbing more off on the way in so you can get on the power a lot earlier on the way out, rather than risk trying to wrestle with the car through the chicane and then find that you can't kind of find your position or find your kind of track position and get out quick enough.
Yep, because what ends up happening is if you don't bleed off enough, you're going to run wide and get a penalty, and you have to find that happy medium where you can get on the power early-ish so that you can really use the entirety of the bus stop.
Yeah, so it's a brutal penalty here as well, absolutely brutal. Yeah. I think if you get a 1 second penalty here, it equates to about 2.5 to 3 seconds of track time.
Yep, because you're in such a high-speed zone and it forces you to hit the brakes for that amount of time. I think a half-second penalty is at least a full second time loss. So
it's massive. I think here and Le Mans are the two worst tracks in the game for penalties. With I think it's Interlagos is a close third. So Nick at the moment 6/10 on in Iron Mullet from the United States. So He's already set a phenomenal time. I mean, he's gone sub 45 already with a 44.5, and nobody else has managed to go that sub 45 yet.
Yeah, a 44.5 is really strong. I think James was saying that maybe if the conditions are right, you could see a 43 from somebody, but that'll require a really strong lap with maybe some slipstream too.
I think you need to be tucked right under the wing of somebody else.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're looking down the order. So I'm mullet on row 1 with Nick. We've got James and Kaz currently sitting on row 2. That's not a bad time from the McLaren. McLaren tends to lack a little bit, I think, top end, but he's very nifty through the corners. So maybe it's picking up the extra time through the infield. Then we've got, how do you pronounce his name? Azorendis? Azorendis. We'll get it.
Yeah.
We've got several hours tomorrow to get that one right.
Yep.
There's Batty, who's just put in a new time, put himself onto still on row 3, but above Azorendis now, with a pretty solid 45.3. Right down the order, let's have a look. So there's Ostereng. I should have my glasses on, really, shouldn't I? He's done a 51.7, so clearly that wasn't a representative timed lap. He clearly got something wrong there, but he's tucked behind Johnny Waffle at the moment, so that might help him out a little bit for a solid time, as we see Mazda putting in a 45.5. So currently, James is now on pole, and it's 4 1,000ths of a second he's stolen that by.
Well, we take those, even if it's 1,000th, it still counts, but we're also doing the super pole, so really this is just about being in the top 7.
Yeah, absolutely. Explain to everyone how the super pole works, mate.
Oh, geez, you're going to put me on the spot. So the top 7 from this qualifying session go on to, I believe it is a 10-minute session after this. And that determines the top 7 order, and then I think the 8 through 14 is determined by whoever's 8 through 14 in this.
So similar in some ways to the kind of the way that F1 do it, in that they kind of knock the bottom lot off and let the top lot go at it.
Yep.
So James looking pretty strong at the moment. Nick in there though still. Can he improve? That's the thing. If you as a driver, and I mean you drive a lot more than I do. You've done your practicing, you've kind of whacked your times, and you know what you're expecting as a qualifying time. If you go out there and then you see someone set a time that absolutely blows it out of the water, even this early on in qualifying, is that a little bit demoralising, do you think, for the drivers?
I think it depends on what kind of person you are. So for me, when I watch James drive, I recognize the limits of my abilities, right? So, I know that I know what I'm capable of, and then my goal is to just hit that. If I can hit that, I'm satisfied, because, not everybody is... You can't... How can I put this? There are just people in the world that are just faster, right? And so if you get caught up in... oh my God, James put down a 44.5 and I've only ever done a 45.1, you're going to end up crashing, or you're not going to be able to drive your best. So I think it can be demoralizing, but you kind of have to push that out of your head. James has gone faster now too. You have to do what you can do and worry about the rest later, because it's still a 24-hour race. So yeah, you might not start, as high up as you like, but there's a lot of strategy to this as well that goes beyond qualifying.
I think you're right. I think it is a lot about, obviously qualifying is about 1 lap pace, but whether you qualify on pole or qualify in 14th position, it's 24 hours of racing. So it's all about consistency. So if you're going to come out there and you're going to put in qualifying laps every lap over the course of a 2-hour stint, you are bound to make mistakes pushing at that kind of level. Kazar there, currently 3rd, just picked up a half-second penalty. So I think, it is about... I mean, today is the day to push it. You've got essentially your sort of hours qualifying here to kind of push the car to its limits. But I think what you want to do, and this is a certain way that I approach it, is that in the first couple of... it's certainly in the first sort of 15-20 minutes of qualifying, I want to get a time on the board that I'm really happy with, that I'll say, okay, if I don't put in another better time, I can deal with that, and then worry about kind of pushing it beyond the envelope and seeing if you might make a mistake every time, but if it comes off, it comes off. If it doesn't, at least you've got something on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they call that a banker lap. I think I've heard that term before, and Yeah, that's exactly right. If you get a time that you feel happy with, then you can start to say, okay, let me see what I can really do with this thing. And sometimes that results in nothing, and sometimes you go faster than you ever went before because you discovered areas that you discovered more pace in areas that you didn't because you weren't pushing quite as hard as you could.
It's funny what I find. I mean, and you know, I'm nowhere near the kind of pace of these guys, but I find that when I've kind of given up on it, and I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it, is when I tend to put in the best lap. It's when I'm sort of not overthinking it. I'm not giving it everything. I'm not taking the piss with the corners, really. I'm just kind of relaxed. I think that tends to be when you put out the best time.
Yeah, it is, and it seems to be true with life in general. Whenever you're not so tense, you tend to just do better. And there's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it was something to the effect of, if you're not worried about the result, you get all of your skills. And it's true everywhere, and especially in something like sim racing where you have to concentrate so hard for so long. Sometimes it's actually easier to just take a breath and let it rip.
Absolutely, and particularly because, you know, a lot of these guys are going to be doing 2, maybe 3 stints tomorrow.
Yep. Yep.
You know, they would have put, and you know, I can't stress enough. Some people watch this and they think, oh, these guys have just rocked up and they've only raced for a couple of hours. What they don't realise that in the month since round 1 is they must have done 300, 400, 500 laps, some of these drivers, just to kind of get their rhythm and get that muscle memory so they can drive for the 2 hours without thinking too much about where's my break point. They've kind of got it. It's kind of there ingrained in that muscle memory, so they can sort of fight off the fatigue that way.
Yep, absolutely. And then, you know, when you're in the chair, even though we're not in the actual cars, right, like, it can be really tiring to have your focus up for that long. And so the more you can kind of automate that through the muscle memory of doing all the practice laps, the easier it ends up being for you to drive all that time without making as many mistakes.
Yeah, I think one thing, there's 2 ways you can look at Daytona, is that you've got that infield section, but for the most part, other than the bus stop, the track is essentially turn left a little bit. So you can kind of relax. But the problem you've got on the other side of that is that if you are too relaxed, when you get to that really tricky infield section through Sector 1, if you are not on the money, you can lose so much time through there.
You really can, and this track, this is my favorite track. I absolutely love driving on it because it fits my driving style of really dragging the brake through corners. And really the first 3 corners or the first 3 major corners, not the actual turn 1 through 2, 3 in this. The first 3 major corners, you all kind of have to drag your brake through them, which I really like. But if the wind changes, which is something that does happen on this track a lot, if you're too relaxed, like you were saying, it can throw you off.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, so as someone who drives, I mean, you drive quite regularly in events like this. Well, once you know you're sort of, you know, you're around 45 minutes into your stint, that's when the kind of cramps start to set in, and you start thinking, do I need to go to the toilet? And you start how hard is that last 15 minutes of a stint?
It can be very difficult. It kind of depends on how you feel going into it. So, like, I'm one of those people that once I get into a stint, I kind of just lock in and everything else around me just kind of shuts off. But and I also play with pretty light force feedback specifically so that my arms can handle it. But it can be tough because especially if you're not driving very well, you look up at the timer and you're like, oh my God, there's still an hour left of this. Like, I got to keep going for another hour. So it can be difficult if you're not on your game, but it can also be really satisfying if you're driving well too. So it kind of gives and takes away, sometimes.
And then from a driver's perspective, because often in these races you'll see that, stint 1 not so bad, but when you get into sort of stint 7, 8, 9, the gaps really start to show between the cars. How hard is it, particularly when you're on maybe a late night stint, or it's some way through it, and there is no car either side? You're looking ahead, they're 25 seconds ahead, the car behind you is 20 seconds back. How hard is it to stay focused when you kind of feel like you're in a bit of a time trial for a while?
Me personally, I actually love that. I do. I do like having that clean track in front of behind me. I think that actually allows me to focus a little more because I don't have to worry about, okay, am I, are they gaining on me or am I gaining on them? What am I going to do about traffic? So that part of it is I kind of, the way I frame it in my mind is that I kind of just say, okay, I'm going to go get the person in front of me. And that's just how I look at it. That kind of keeps me focused on, hitting my braking markers, hitting my apexes, getting my acceleration points right, really to just allow me to stay focused, because if there's no one around me and I'm not focused on that, you can kind of get into this like, okay, I'm just kind of cruising around the track and end up losing time. So for me, it's really all about, I just, kind of like I said earlier, let me just do what I can. I see the person in front of me, I'm going to hit all my spots and just try and go get them.
That's awesome, because for me, I find it the other way. I find if I've got an empty track, I start to think, what the hell am I doing here? I kind of want to be in a battle all the time. Even if I can see the guy there and I know I can't catch them, I want to be able to see the back of the car. I think that's kind of what G's me on a little bit more, is either someone's chasing me, I can see them with my mirrors, or I can see that car ahead, and I know you've got the timer and you can tell by the timer how far back you are, but when you've physically got a physical target, that for me is the thing that kind of spurs me on, I think.
Absolutely, and I feel the same way. But it's, with it, lobbies only being 14 cars and this track being pretty big, there are just times when there won't be anybody in front of you, and so I look at the delta a lot to kind of use as motivation. And sometimes, if the person in front of you is getting farther away, sometimes that gives you the ability to kind of mentally say, okay, either they're better than I am, or I'm pushing too hard and losing time, therefore I just need to reset, and then you relax, and then you start getting back to hitting your braking points and things like that. And sometimes it really just is getting the car around the track in one piece and handing it off to your teammates. Sometimes you can't do anything more than that, and that by itself is okay, because you got the car on the track without making your team's position a lot worse.
That's it. I mean, I found with these endurance races, it's very difficult to, in early stints to say, okay, well, this team's clearly dominating, because there's different drivers to come. You're going to have, at certain times, you're going to have driver mismatches as well. You're going to have the very fastest driver on a team and maybe the not so fastest driver on a team in the same stint. So I think it's very difficult in early stints to go, okay, well, this guy's pulling away from me. It is a case of just keeping the car where you need it to be, and know that your teammate's going to come in after you and then pick up where you left off, and they may find that extra time, or actually you may have done a good enough job to keep them where they need to be.
Yep, exactly. And really it's just for me, because I am absolutely not the fastest driver in AHR by any stretch of the imagination, and I know that as long as I do my stint and keep the car in one piece, I can hand it to one of my super talented teammates who can maybe find the time that I couldn't, or something like that. But if I don't do my job, if I'm crashing or getting penalties or things like that, then that to me is it's almost worse than, this is going to sound really weird, but that is worse than if I had gained some time and I don't know what I'm saying. But
I think I know what you're saying. I kind of get where you're coming from. Is that if we were if we'd made it into GTEC, my advice would always be to the driver: look, if you can't hit that mark every lap, drop a tenth, drop a couple of tenths, and keep it consistent. Because there's 12 stints. If you might come in and it's not quite working, so just make sure you get the car home, even if you're losing time, because someone will come in and pick up that slack for you.
Exactly, and everybody, and it could be depending on the day. Like maybe I'm having a bad day, and it's really just about safety. I talk to my teammates a lot about, guys, this is a 24-hour race. A lot of it's about safety. Someone might be faster than you, but if they are getting wheel spin out of a corner too late in their stint, all that time they gained is going to be lost, as long as we just stay safe too.
Absolutely, and the other thing as well, you don't know how much fuel saving the other cars are doing. You don't know how well they're looking after the fuel, after the tyres. So they could be on a completely different strategy as well. Right, let's have a little rundown, because we're nearly 20 minutes through. So James has put in what can only be described as a monster time, a 1:44.1. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see a sub 44 lap here today for pole. because the times are tumbling. Nick still holding on that front row, 44.5 for him. Kaza and Jay Batty are on row 2. Kaza in that he's getting some great pace out of that 650S. He's on a 44.9. With Batty also 44.9. There's nothing separating those, 4 1/1000ths of a second. 900 between him and Monkey Man, Black Flag driver, whoop whoop, although he's on racing for Sector 7 today. But good luck to him. But that's a really good time, and he did that for about 1:45.0. He did that without any slipstream at all, I've been told. The guy whose name I can't pronounce from Portugal, he's currently in 6th, 45.0 for him, just ahead of I'm Mullet from the United States with a 45.1, which ironically was his first hot lap, and he hasn't been able, he's got close but not quite close enough since then. Mazda from he's not in Australia, he's New Zealand, isn't he, Mazda? Shouldn't mix those two up, they'll punch you in the head. So Mazda currently running in 8th position for the other Sector 7 team. I do love the livery on this car. Let me have a little zoom into this, because they've gone kind of retro, but changed out the logo for the Sector 7 logo there. I really like that. Nuke's done I think it was Nuke that did that, but Nuke's done a really good job of that. It's very smart. Paradin therefore ready to race. He's currently with a 45.3. Ghost just behind him at a 45.5. He's putting on some fresh rubber. I need to go and get my glasses. Mantineo from Italy, running in 11:45.5 as well for him. Ostereng from that's Norway, isn't it? That one. Yeah, I'll get one. Or is it Denmark?
Because I'm behind on the stream, I can't tell yet, but I'm sure once you get to it, I might. Me, the American, will have a crack at it, even though I might still be wrong.
It's either Norway or Denmark. I'll get them mixed up. It's somewhere in Europe. They've got long hair and beards. 45.5 for him. My old friend Roses from Race Asylum. I do love that livery on that 911. I see that quite a lot now, and it's a very cool livery, that shark kind of thing they've got going on. 45.6 for him. And Johnny Waffle from the Medway Racing League. He is only 2.1 seconds separates the alien that is James and Johnny Waffle in 14th. That's a really close field, isn't it?
It is pretty close, and to be fair to Johnny Waffle, I mean, James is a half second ahead of Nick, and so really the field is even closer than that.
Absolutely.
And so this track is it's good for that. You know, it's not super complicated, and so you can have a lot of close qualifying times here.
And of course, every lap they do, they're scrubbing off the fuel, because you know they're all going in for tyres, but no one is going in for fuel. So they're really going to scrub off that fuel. And when they're light, I think one or two people are going to put in a sub 44 lap. Nick is no longer on that front row, though. He is now on row 2. I'm Mullet from the United States. He's your fellow countryman from GSR. He's 3/10 behind James now. Really, really good pace in that Corvette for him.
Wow, that's a really good lap for sure. Anything in the mid to low 44s in qualifying is really strong.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. But I'm looking forward to this tomorrow, because I think it's one of those races where you really can. I think the nature of this track means that it's not going to be like you know, you find like races like Bathurst, for instance, they tend to get quite stale as you get into the sort of night time, when people slow it down through the mountain and people are spread out and they kind of go through the motions. But I think here, where you've got the opportunity for slipstream, and where you've got these long runs on full power, I think we're gonna see some good battles, particularly in the midfield, when we get into the early hours of the morning. Certainly in terms of the game, when it gets into the early hours of the morning, because it's well lit as well, so you don't have that issue of those kind of long shadows changing braking points and that kind of thing here that you do with some of the other circuits.
Right, yeah, this track is pretty good about having very obvious braking points, even if it's like a line on the road or something. This track is also really well lit at night, which helps tremendously, because there are some tracks that there are barely any lights at all, and it can make it a little scary to try and battle with somebody at night.
I heard a rumour today, and I don't know how true this is, that the next update will contain Silverstone as a new track. And I'll tell you what, if it's true, I am so excited.
Yeah, I think that. So I frequent the app formerly known as Twitter a lot, and there was an account that was posting pictures that were like, if I were in charge of Gran Turismo update, and there were pictures with like cars from Assetto Corsa that had like the Gran Turismo font over it, as if PD did it. And one of the batches of pictures that they did was Silverstone. And so I suspect that's what that came from, because I've seen other accounts, like there's an out of context Gran Turismo Twitter account that posts stuff, and that account posted the Silverstone thing. So that's my guess. It would be cool. Silverstone's a cool track, and it was in other Gran Turismo games. So
yeah, and it is of course it is the home of motorsport.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, no, it would be awesome, and it's actually a track that I'm not too bad at as well. So I could do with some more of them. The tracks that I'm quite good at and I know quite well. Right, let's have a little run through. We're 25 minutes in. So James still on pole, comfortably, I would say, 3/10 clear at the moment. He hasn't really dropped out of the 44s, apart from a couple of the odd 45 here and there, but he's pretty much sticking in those mid 44s, and then occasionally bringing out the big guns with that 44-1. I'm Mullet with that 44-4. That's his first foray into the sub 45 lap. So was that a kind of purple lap from him, like the absolute cream, or is there more to come as the car gets lighter? That's the big question. Nick there, now on row 2. Is he biding his time a little bit, letting the fuel scrub off in that Corvette? Maybe. Monkey Man Macho in that AMG, and I think the AMG is going to be a strong car around here, because it's just got that it's got that grunt, and for me this is the most beautiful GT3 car ever made, ever in the history of cars. It is absolutely gorgeous. I can't find a fault with it. Never have been able to. When they replaced the F1 safety car for the Aston Martin, I was absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
Batty there, he is. He's just dipped into those. He's dipped a couple of times into 44s. He's just done a 44.945. That's his fastest lap yet, and that keeps him in the front of row 3. But still, just 4 thousandths of a second ahead of Kaza, who's backing out of this lap and just letting the faster cars go by. Azoriendis. I'm gonna have to practice that tonight, aren't I? Or I just hope he doesn't do stint 1. He is a 10th behind Kaza, 45.0, which he did quite early on. So as the fuel's coming off, he's not finding the same kind of pace. And is that because of where the fuel tank is, do you think, in terms of weight? Because with the MR cars, the fuel tank tends to be kind of closer to the back of the car, doesn't it? So it puts a lot of weight on the back. So as the fuel comes out of the car, you kind of lose a little bit of that rear end grip.
Yep. It depends on the car. There are some cars that, as the fuel goes down, you start to have problems with braking. You start to lose the back end and get some oversteer on braking. I don't know if maybe that's what's happening.
I certainly find it with the 911. And the 911, we know that the fuel tank is right there at the back, so all the weight is literally behind the car. And I find with the 911, as the fuel comes off, the back gets twitchier and twitchier. So maybe it's the same case with the 650S here. Could be. You know, they've made. I know that the BOP changes, they don't always announce everything, but it seems like they have made a little change here and there over the last year to the 650 that's made it feel a little different. Yeah, it generally it's my sort of go-to daily racing car, just because it's easy to drive and you don't have to mess around with it too much, and it's kind of got a little bit of everything. It's just one of those things. I'm not one of those that comes on and does the daily races and tries out 27 different cars and looks at the leaderboard. I just drive the car that makes me feel most comfortable, and I feel I'm less likely to crash in.
Yeah, absolutely. The 650 is really easy to drive in that regard. It has a lot of grip under power as an MR car, which is fantastic here too.
But both PM10 Racing Paul and Slipstream are both saying that they think a few new real world tracks in GT7 are needed, and I think they're right. I haven't got. I think a lot of the tracks they've created are brilliant and would actually work very well as actual racetracks. But I think a lot of us would like to see some more of the real world tracks. I mean, like Kilama, for instance, in South Africa, great track. That you get that in Assetto Corsa, but you don't really see it anywhere else. iRacing, obviously, but then iRacing you have to pay for everything. But yeah, I think it'd be nice to see a lot of these, particularly the ones that you see a lot in the GT racing series. You've got a lot of things like Alton Park and things like that we don't really see on many games.
Yeah, it's true. I've driven a little bit of some of the other tracks that aren't in Gran Turismo and things like ACC and iRacing, and I think people, and I can't speak for everyone, but me personally, like if they were willing to bring out tracks a little faster, like maybe do what ACC does, where they release like a bundle of 3, I would be willing to pay for it. The free updates are awesome and all, but for me, as someone that pretty much only exclusively races race cars, it can be a little disappointing to know that we're still using GT cars from, almost 10 years ago in some cases. So
no, absolutely, I think I'm with you on that. I think if you talk to, if you look across the entire Gran Turismo community, the guys like us that race online and race online regularly makes up a small percentage of the bulk of the Gran Turismo audience, and we know that the majority of their money comes from just the initial sales. But you can't help but think that if you look at the way that gaming is changing, particularly like you look at things like GTA and the way that Rockstar kind of have their business model, I think that is the way that gaming is changing and the future of gaming. And I don't see any reason why, if they start introducing, here's a DLC pack specifically for online racers. So if you're playing single player, it's not for you guys. But if you're racing online, here's 20 additional tracks, and give us $10 or £10, and it's yours. I think every single person that races online would use that.
Absolutely, and we are on the last lap of quali, at least the first quali.
We are indeed, and James sits atop the pole. So, where's the cut-off point? Roses currently in that top 8, and it looks like he's done. Is there anyone still setting a fast lap? That's the burning question. There's Osterring there. He's currently sitting in P12. He's done now as well. Didn't improve on that. No, that's it. So Roses is the one that creeps in 8th. So we'll bring up the results there for all to see. James, the 44-1, proved to be unbeaten when he got it on the board. But look at the Corvettes, absolutely locking out that front 3. All 3 of them Corvettes. Now, the question is, tyres and fuel. Is that going to come into play for them? Is that going to be a problem? Because it can be an issue in the Corvette. So qualifying it might be so good, but is it going to be so strong in the race?
Yeah, it'll be tough to see. I know the 650 is extremely good on its tires, and I know historically the Corvette was not great on its tires, but I believe the buff that it got was a weight reduction, which will help some of its tire wear. It seemed good enough for us, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will be. It certainly will be. The Mustang, which you would expect, more American muscle would have put in a bit more pace around here. That's Mr. Johnny Waffle in that with a 46-1, which, to be fair, is significantly better than anything I could put in around here. So there's nothing I can really say about that. But it is quite a close field if you look across the 14. Only a couple of seconds separating them. But it's down to the top 8 now to see what they can do in this kind of super pole scenario. So it's very difficult to predict what happens over 24 hours, but if I were to ask you to go out on a limb and say, who do you think is the biggest threat in the race tomorrow? And obviously I know there's going to be a little bit of bias on your part. Who would you say is the big team to watch out for? Let's pick the team, the obvious team to watch out for, and who you think might be a bit of a dark horse.
So I think one of the teams to watch out for is going to be Overboost. I have raced and watched a lot of their drivers, and that team is fantastic. They are a team that's very good from top to bottom, which makes a 24-hour race. The longer the race, the better you have the better chance you have if your whole team is kind of at the same level, if that makes sense, as opposed to having like one driver that's really good, but they only do 2 stints, and then maybe driver number 2 is okay. Does that make sense? And so ORT is really good from top to bottom, and so across the 24-hour race, that is definitely something to watch out for. And as far as a dark horse, I don't want to shout out my own team because I feel like that's not fair, but
I wouldn't call your team a dark horse. I think your team are there or thereabouts favourites for this one.
Well, we'll see. It's a long race, so anything can happen, right? I mean, and it doesn't even include possible things like disqualifications or whatnot. I would look for, I forget which team was in the Lexus that qualified in the top 7, but I would look out for the Lexus here. The Lexus is very, very, very strong on the infield. And so it gives them the opportunity, if they can, the Lexus top end is not the best, but if you can use the tri-oval to get around somebody, you could leave somebody, you could put a gap on them on the infield. So apologies for not recognizing which team that was, because we had the list up at once. But,
yeah, to be fair, you would have thought that I would make some effort to try and memorise them, but that would involve me being some level of professional.
Well, we do what we can over here. It feels like I'm holding on for dear life every day, so I'm just doing what I can over here.
Yeah, I might look like I've got my shit together, but believe me, I'm blagging it every minute of the day. So we've got a new lobby up, and it was top 7 that go through for the Super Bowl. I'm going to pick my dark horse, and it's going to be the second of the 2 Sector 7 teams. I know that the number 1 Sector 7 team has an incredibly fantastic driver in Sharky driving for them, and believe me, he's super, super quick. Very difficult to beat. But I like the lineup of the second Sector 7 team, and I think that I think they're going to pull something out of the bag here. I think they're going to finish higher than expected in the race tomorrow. But as you say, it's 24 hours, and literally anything can happen. So yeah, we'll see. It'll be whatever happens. It will be a very interesting race for sure.
Yep, I'm excited. This is my first 24-hour race, so I'm very excited to see how it all pans out.
How many stints you doing tomorrow?
Just 2.
2.
So I'm streaming 1 and driving 2, and maybe if you want me to take stint 3, I'll stream that as well, because I'll be around all day. So
no, I think I can probably manage to. Well, I'm sure I can manage stint 3, but I'll juggle it. I'll sort something out in the morning. We'll find people to fill the roles, because the thing is, I mean, you're going to be driving for 4 hours, and as you said earlier, you might not be physically in the car, but it's still a very physical thing you're doing.
Yep. The mental exhaustion will be the big thing, I think, for everyone, because most people don't have to concentrate for this many hours in such a short period of time. And so, and then things like if you get hungry halfway through your stint, there's all these little things that can add up to where you can make a mistake you might not otherwise make.
Absolutely. And you do kind of rely on the people that live with you to make sure you're hydrated and you've got what you need kind of right there, and you're kind of, okay, I need to go to pits now because I really need to have a drink.
Right.
Here's the other question. So how many drivers do you think have the opportunity to go and run for a quick wee during a pit stop? Because you've got to have a rig that's easy to get out of, firstly, and you've got to be in a house that's small enough that you can get there and back.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, the very first team race that AHR ever did together was it was like a 2-hour race at Watkins Glen, and James thought he had enough time to go to the bathroom during his pit stop, and he was wrong. And so I remember I wasn't, I was probably about 20 seconds behind him when he entered the pits, and then I passed him going through turn 1 because his car was parked at a barrier because he didn't get back in time coming out of the pits. So it would be tough. The fuel refill being 8 liters a second is pretty fast, so you're not going to have that much time.
No, absolutely. I think that's key. I think you're going to have to, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to. I mean, I'm quite lucky. If I was doing it, I can see my bathroom door from where I'm sitting. But even still, I've still got to get out of the chair. I've still got to get there. I've got to get back. And it has actually happened to me once. I was doing I was doing a 90-minute race, and I'd sort of planned it. I thought, right, I'm going to go to the pits in a couple of laps' time. I'm going to run and have a wee, and I'm going to come back. And I turned to go, and my daughter had just locked herself in to have a bath. So it was kind of like, okay, someone's holding this until the end of the race then.
Yep.
So we've got the top 7. Now the big question is, like, it's going to be, you've got to think from James's perspective. Mm-hmm. The pressure is on him to recreate that lap, because he's already put himself essentially on pole, but he's now got to try and do that again with 6 cars behind him that can potentially take that from him. It would be quite devastating, wouldn't it, to be on pole for so long, get to super pole, and to have that snatched from you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be frustrating, but at the end of the day, it's you just got to control what you can control. You know, he knows that he has the lap in him, and he drove enough laps in the mid 44s where he could probably put one down on command at this point. So a mid 44 is plenty fast enough to be in the top, 3 or 4 probably. So, it would be, I think, from his perspective, a little disappointing, because I know his standards for himself are very high, and rightfully so, because he's incredible. But from a team perspective, like, I'm not, we as an AHR are just thrilled that he is willing to drive and do quali and be as good as he is. Any result we're going to be happy with. But we'll
absolutely.
See.
I think any driver that's in the top 7 now, with how close the entire field is anyway, should be proud of the achievement, because it's a good place to start. But again, it's such a long race that I don't think that pole. I think actually on a racetrack like this, pole matters less than maybe anywhere else, because you're kind of at a disadvantage being at the front, because essentially you've got 13 cars behind you, all getting tucked under your rear wing and using your fuel to get around the track.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so really the only advantage you might have starting in first would be the turn 1 chaos. Maybe you could get away with not being hit, if somebody just brakes late or something like that. Speaking of James, I think he had a spill going into the first right-hander and reset to the pit, so he gets clean track, which might actually be beneficial for him.
Possibly, but then you've got to look at all the cars ahead, although they're all bunched up behind Nick. And actually, Nick is probably one of the best people to be bunched behind, because he's super, super quick, that if you bunch behind him, there is that chance you can get a good bit of slipstream without necessarily getting too close and being compromised. So, yeah, the cars behind are going to get, well, certainly Kaza is going to get a little bit of help, but he's going to need to be make sure he gets it right, of course. But yeah, turn 1 chaos, because this Monza and this track are 2 that are notorious for lap 1, turn 1 shenanigans. As a driver, how do you cope with that kind of, you go into turn 1, you try and stay out of the way, and then next thing you know, you're facing the other direction, car in the wall. How do you get your head back in the game? Because you kind of psych yourself up for the start, and then boom, turn 1 that happens. How do you get yourself psyched back up and back into the game?
It's really hard. So for me, in the way that my brain works, if something unexpected happens, it completely breaks my brain, and you kind of have to just take a breath, especially if you get spun out in turn 1. So there's no way that you're going to maintain your position, right? And so the best thing to do, get the car back on track, and even just the next few corners, maybe not take them at full speed, and just have this little discussion with yourself of, okay, I can't do anything about that. We have 2 hours to go. Just put your head down, get your laps in, hit your mark, and see what time you can make up. Because, in 24 hours, it's not a lot of time. Like, it seems like you're like, oh my god, the race just started, I'm 10 seconds behind. But across a 24-hour race, you can make that up just by having a good strategy, just by not getting caught in traffic, So you kind of just have to tell yourself those things, and the rest will work itself out.
Yeah, it is horrible though, isn't it? You've got everything kind of there. You qualify well. You think you've got your strategy out, and then someone forgets that there's a quiet pedal next to the loud pedal.
Right.
So Nick has put in his first qualifying time, but it's Kaza, And I said that the slipstream would help, and it has. It's put Kazza on pole with a 1:45.0. So they've actually started quite slowly in comparison to pole the first time, but the wind has changed. So the wind is now almost in the opposite direction, and it's not quite as blowy. So it's going to make a massive difference, actually, because they're not really going to get any benefit from that wind now, because it's pointing essentially towards them pretty much everywhere they go.
Yeah, this wind is one of the slowest. So the wind they had in the first qualification was one of the fastest, and it makes such a big difference when it comes to hitting your braking points. You just lose time without even realizing it.
I think our dreams of a 1:43 may have been dashed by that wind, but you don't know. So Kazza is on pole. Nick currently sitting on that front row with him. Row 2 is I Mullet and Monkey Man Macho Man, and he's doing such a good job in that AMG. James there, he is 5th. Of course, he's got some time to make up, so he'll probably improve on that. As he finds the rhythm, because he had that, as you say, he had that little spill early on, so you have to kind of get your head back in the game and find that rhythm again. That's the other question, actually, with pit stops. You know when you have, and I've had it before. You kind of get that purple patch, and you're hitting every apex, and you feel that you're putting in really consistent times, and you feel it's perfect, and then you can see the fuel going down. There's times when you look at that and you think, I don't want to pit. I want to keep this momentum going.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the getting into the flow of the track and the rhythm of all of it. It's just sometimes you kind of get what they call in the zone or in the flow state, depending on how you look at it. And a pit stop can, if you break your concentration in the pits, it can ultimately harm you a little bit.
Yeah, I found that when I had a race a couple of weeks back where I had that, and I had my kind of middle stint was it's probably the best I could have done in the entire race, and when I knew I had to change, and it was one of those with a mandatory change, so I didn't have to change because I needed them. I had to change because I would have been disqualified otherwise. And it was I was thinking, well, I can't leave it to the last lap because that's going to cost me loads, but I don't want to pit because if I do, I might come out and it doesn't quite work. But then I think it actually works the other way. When you start thinking like that, you always come out of the pits and it doesn't work because you've kind of convinced yourself that it won't.
Right, exactly. It's a lot of this is mental. You know, so much of it is mental, and that you spend all this time practicing and doing all this stuff, and if you break your concentration for any reason, whether it's a crash in turn 1 on lap 1, whatever the reason, it's a skill to get your mind back in the right place as well. So there's a lot to it that goes into having a consistent stint, and some of it is just making sure that your mind stays in a good place no matter what you're doing, whether it's pit stop or a crash or a mistake or anything like that.
Yeah, I find another good thing as well is to kind of, particularly if you're doing a long stint like 2 hours, is to kind of break it up into 5-lap segments or 15-minute segments and say, okay, for this particular segment, this is my target. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. Rather than look across the whole 2 hours and say, at the end of the 2 hours, I want to be here. Because then you can kind of build little wins along the way. So if you do have a sort of 5-lap, 10-lap, 15-minute session where it didn't go quite well, you can look back and go, well, actually, the last 3 15-minute sessions were great. The next one was pretty good. In the scheme of things, it was all right.
Right, and when I talk to my friends who aren't necessarily sim racers and they're stressed out in life, whatever, I tell them to try and find little micro moments. So kind of like you were saying, little wins throughout, the day or what have you, where you just kind of have to take things, even if it's as small as taking one breath at a time. If you just, take your breath, find your next breaking point, do all these little micro moments in a row rather than saying, like you said, okay, I started in P8, by the end of this, then I want to be in P5 or whatever. That can cause more harm than good, because if you start to realize you're not going to make it, you don't have that good mental state backup plan, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, I work in the building trade, so a lot of the time you get to a job and you think, oh my God, I've got so much to do over the next 3 or 4 days. But I tend to kind of go, okay, well look, if I'm fitting a bathroom, for instance, I think, okay, right, my target today is to make sure that by the end of today the bath is in and in where it needs to be, and then tomorrow this bit's done, and then the next day that bit's done. And I find that actually makes the job a lot easier, because I'm not thinking about what happens at the end. I'm thinking about what I can achieve in the time that I've got right in front of me. And I think if you put that, you can apply that to anything, whether it be sim racing or life or job or whatever. I think you apply that to everything, and suddenly life becomes a lot less stressful.
Absolutely.
So, talking of stressful, James, currently on road 2. Nick has gone sub 45 with that 1:44.8, and you can see, I mean, that's a good 4/10 off of his previous time in the earlier. Oh, there we go. That's not the way to get round. He's decided to go via the grass, so that's not going to be a very quick lap. Kaz's still on that front row though. 45 dead, absolutely on the money. 1:45, and looking good at the moment. James is starting to ramp it up. 45.080. So he's closing that gap. He's finding the pace. It's whether he can find. He still needs to find a few tenths though, if he wants to get on pole. I'm Mullet, currently sitting in the pits. Now, is he happy with his time? He's 7/10 off Nick at the moment, and he doesn't seem to be leaving the pit. So maybe, you know, when we were talking earlier about, you know, you do your practice laps and you find your purple time. Has he hit the time that is absolutely bang on the money of where he thinks he can get to? And he's like, I'm going to stay here now.
Yeah, you know, could very well be. I know that the wind definitely makes a difference here. It's kind of annoying how much of a difference it makes.
And yeah, of course, when you're heading down towards that bus stop as well, that's a crosswind, which is going to make things even harder. So,
Yep.
Who manages to squeeze through for another lap? So Nick is in the pits. He's given it up the game. He's holding on to hope no one nicks it. Kazar is done. Currently sits second. James, he's on his final lap. Now, is this going to be a pole stealing lap? It's looking not too bad. A couple of seconds left. Is he going to beat it? He's not. He stays on row 2. But a valiant effort. We've got the Portugueser. He is currently sitting on row 2 as well. He's finished Monkey Man Macho with a 45.4. That's a good lap in the AMG. Really good lap. I'm Mullet in 6th, and Batty in that Lexus. And he was your little outside bet, wasn't he? 7th at the moment. So 8/10 separating the top 7 drivers. That's a pretty close grid to start the race tomorrow.
Yeah, it is definitely. It's going to be a really exciting race for sure.
So so we start at 3 o'clock our time. What time is it your time that we start?
We're 4 hours behind, so it's 11 a.m.
Yeah, 11 a.m. So it'd be interesting lunchtime for you guys. So who are we waiting on? Kaza is coming round now. Is it because someone's sitting in the pits and haven't come round? That might be why, actually. Yes, we're just waiting for the timer to tick down. But yeah, 45.000. Do that one again.
Yeah, right.
It is really, really hard to kind of hit those numbers, isn't it? Sometimes, you know,
Yeah, it is.
Even to hit within a couple of tenths of a time sometimes is a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of crazy how, you know, laps that feel similar can have such different times too, even if it's like a few tenths.
I think that's what separates the men from the boys. I mean, if you look at you know, the professional racing drivers and you say to them, right, go out there and give me that time, they will give it sort of money, which is, I suppose, why they get paid the big bucks and we don't. So there we have it.
Exactly.
That is your top 7 for tomorrow from the Super Bowl. So Nick in the Corvette, and again the Corvette looking very, very strong. 1:44.8, he takes pole. He's joined on that front row by Kazar. In the McLaren 650S. Now, to get that kind of time at McLaren, particularly with that wind, that is pretty awesome. James in the Corvette on row 2 with Asriendis. I'm going to get that right at some point. Also in the 650S in 4th. Monkey Man Macho in the AMG GT3. I'm Mullet in the Corvette in 6th. And Jay Batty in that Lexus RCF rounds out that top 7 from the Super Bowl. Thank you very much for joining me, Bro Hawk. It's been awesome. We will catch up tomorrow, I'm sure. But everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe and share and all the stuff you need to do. And we will see you live here, 11 a.m. US time. Well, depending on where you are in the US, of course, 3 p.m. UK time for stint number 1 of the second round of the G-Tech Daytona 24 hour. It's been emotional. See you later, man.
Cheers.